How's my volume, by the way?
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Guess we'll get started here. Welcome to another Common Lisp study group. This is Ram Vedam with Atlanta Functional Programming. Today we're going to be talking about writing user interfaces using the LTK library, the Lisp that is the Lisp binding to the TK library for Tickle. This library has been around for about 13 years, at least 13 years. I've discovered it way back in 2006 when I first started learning Lisp with Practical Common Lisp. It's a fairly complete binding for the TK library in that it supports the majority of the widgets that are in the TK docs. So if you need something specific from, like, say, the TK docs, this library certainly should have an equivalent for you. For folks who are looking at the LTK documentation, kind of a note to keep in mind. This documentation was kind of completed, I mean, with the occasional bugs or whatever issues that need to be arose, around 2011. So don't be alarmed by the date of the documentation, because it's still kind of useful in terms of what it covers and so forth. I'm going to give a kind of a brief tutorial of the library, on what's available in it. I'm going to try and get into some particular examples in the library with respect to some nice graphics widgets that I've been putzing around with in it for drawing and stuff like that. But on top of that, there might be, if there's some particular questions that folks want to ask, feel free to go ahead and, post them both on the stream and, mention them in our discussion. So if you just give me one moment, let me go and share my screen here. Apologies ahead of time, because right now I need to share my entire desktop. So you might see some, Inception-like windows within windows for a brief moment. Oh, thanks, Michael. Yes, you're right. It's pronounced tech. Did not know that. But let me just go ahead and post this up. Not stop live stream. Hello?
So apparently it does.
That's just weird. I don't know why that would be.
I had to hit accept in order for it to actually
play sound.
Okay. I'm sorry. Jitsi, we're still getting used to the Jitsi software, so I can understand. There's a couple of weird things about it that I'm not aware of, that we're just encountering as we go along. All right. Excellent. Can you guys see my screen? I'm hoping it looks like it.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Let me just go ahead and minimize this guy, since I don't need this for the time being. All right. So let me fire up, and let me just minimize this guy too as well. I have a bunch of windows on my desktop. I apologize ahead of time. Did not, and yes, you guys are going to see a bit of different things around here. All right, close. All right. Oh, wait, one more. Geez, I should have cleaned up my desktop. All right. Now we can get started. Let me fire up Slime here. I will say, for folks who are using Sly, I don't know what it is. It might be the version of, I haven't updated Sylvester in a while, but I noticed, at least when I tried to load up LTK through Sylvester on SBCL 154 was complaining about something. I will, for folks who want more details, I'll post that to Discord. We could discuss it there. But for today's discussion, I'm going to be using Slime instead of Sly. So let me just go ahead and show you a little bit of a project that I created. So when you start, obviously, I don't know what other folks do. I always tend to, create a new project using CL project. I'm going to show you my ASD file here. So the only dependency that you need to start with the tech library is the LTK dependency. It kind of assumes that you have tech installed. Now, for whether you're using Mac or Linux, this is kind of, at least from what I can tell, it's always available. I haven't seen a situation where it's not. Now, of course, if you guys are creating custom Linux distributions, it may, very well be the case that you didn't install Tickle and TK, Tickle and Tech. So I can understand if you don't have it. But if you're going to be playing around with the LTK library, it kind of assumes that this is available. So let me just go ahead and quick load this workshop. And let me open up what I was working on earlier. Okay. So LTK really is kind of a very, I would say, a minimal binding over the tech library. So what it does is, behind the scenes, is it hooks into the Wish server, which is the Tickle Tech server that gets started up if you want to play with writing user interfaces in tech, as well as the interpreter. And it almost verbatim passes in commands. So it does like a source translation of what you would eventually have in your UI, and behind the scenes, it will go ahead and translate them to the appropriate tech commands and then pass them over to Wish for interpretation. In order to see this, I thought it would be easy for us to just go ahead and use some of the special variables. Now, let me first, give me just 1 second here. I'm going to switch over to that package. Tech comes with kind of 3 different special variables, actually 4 different ones. You can obviously figure out, what version of the library you have using star LTK version. And if you really wanted to find what path to Wish you're using and its arguments that are being passed into, there are 2, additional special variables called LTK Wish path name and LTK Wish args. One thing to note about this is if you're running different versions of Wish, of course, this will allow you to, change to different versions and then create different Wish version servers using the same Lisp image. But to get things started, I'm just going to go ahead and use this special variable called debug LTK debug tech to true, and this allows us to see what actually gets passed in to the Wish server as we develop our applications. For folks, obviously, for production code, you don't necessarily need to use this. If you're playing around with LTK on the REPL, you can actually start Wish manually by using LTK : start Wish, and this will actually start up a Wish server, and then allows you to pass in widgets, do some interactive GUI prototyping, and if you want to even play around with the event handling pieces that you wrote in the REPL, you can go ahead and do so by. Can someone please put themselves on mute? Thanks. You could certainly do so by.
What are you doing?
Hello? Does anybody have a question? Okay. Thanks. What I was saying is you can start Wish this way, and then if you want to play around with your event handling on the REPL for stuff that you kind of prototyped, you can certainly do so by calling LTK main loop, which is this guy, and that will start the event loop, which is really just a socket server hooked into the REPL, the Wish server that's running behind the scenes, and it will pass events to it. But that's some of the undercover stuff to deal with if you want to interact it with the REPL. Today, I'm just going to go ahead and go through it with the script, and with this. The LTK library provides a nice little macro called LTK that essentially starts the Wish server behind the scenes and then starts up the main loop after it sets up the UI that we are designing into a nice little thing so that you can actually exit. Obviously, every application has a hello world example. This workshop cannot be a workshop on GUIs without having also a subsequent hello world example. So what I did was I adopted a simple example that was in the documentation on creating a button. Here, what this does is it creates an instance of a button, and upon pressing it, it passes in a anonymous function that returns from it, and doesn't return anything specifically. There's a lot of stuff here that I will come into talking about later on in this discussion. But the main things to note is we are using standard classes and the infrastructure there to instantiate widgets. So if you see here, we're using make instance to create an instance of a button. The master is essentially used to allow you to group different widgets with a common parent. So you can have and later on I'll show you some container classes like frames, as you see in the next example, that we're going to leverage actually has a master to group in elements when they get passed in. Before you actually put any widget on some sort of surface, you have to pack it into the LTK main top level. That's what they call the window. So that's what this LTK pack thing is. And we'll talk about layout here. There's two types of layout inside of the Lisp tech binding, and we will see that as we go along. So let's see what this looks like. So I just compiled this function, and I'm just going to go ahead and run it. And what this did behind the scenes, you can see, this simple little button that's on button windowed on my screen actually generates quite a bit of stuff that's passed into tech. And Wish actually dumps this out for us. This is what it's generating. It creates a callback to our closure that we wrote earlier. And on button press, it also has some information related to what's going to print out before it actually returns from it. You don't have to worry about all the code that's being dumped out by the debug. I'm only showing this to you just to illustrate that what it's kind of happening behind the scenes. But this kind of will help folks if there's particular tech code that you see that doesn't seem right, that you want to show this is kind of what it's generating. And it'll help find issues with not only the tech LTK binding itself, but maybe issues on what we understood on the tech library side too, and fix things along. If you obviously press this button here, this doesn't do anything. It just returns nil. It's a really dumb example, but it kind of illustrates what the basics of the tech application. Again, if you didn't notice on my desktop, when I ran this, I'm going to run it again, Wish actually started behind the scenes, and it generated this widget. So it will first start up the Wish server, like I said before, then set up a connection between your Lisp interpreter and this, and then it will return accordingly. Let's say that there is a bug in here. Let's put some sort of, I think what I tried doing originally was a nil, which will cause an issue. No, that's not what it was. There's a way to actually. Okay, I know how to create an error. I'll show you what happens about this later on. But what I was going to try and show you is that what the LTK binding did, and this is kind of nice, is any errors that you get from events, you can actually pop into a proper Lisp debugger, and you can debug it accordingly. But I have an example later on that actually illustrates this that I was trying to get done, and looks like it was about halfway through when I implemented it. Like I said, there are container classes in tech for you to group elements. These are standard things that you would see in any kind of UI framework. And again, these are all bindings on what's actually in TK itself, in tech itself. For more information on what widgets are out there for containers, I do encourage you to read both the tech reference as well as the LTK documentation for other container ones. The one that I'm showing right now is Frame, and this is going to help us talk about layouts a little bit. Before I continue, are there any questions? I mean, this is kind of some basic stuff that I'm showing right now. Okay. So in this example here, this Frame example, again, nothing spectacular here. We're kind of showing what is, how do you kind of like group elements against the same common container class. And we have two buttons here that are both packed into a frame, but notice in here how we're packing. So in the LTK library, what you will find is there are different layout options for you to actually go in and kind of put together your UIs, and it depends on what type of packing you're doing. Like I mentioned, there are two types of layout managers. One is called the pack manager, and the other one is called the grid one. The grid has totally different options in terms of what is available, and we can see that here if we just simply mouse over. If you see in the mini buffer, we have like several options to actually go and hook into this. Let's go through some of these one by one. Each of these are obviously a keyword argument. Some of them with some default arguments, as you can see in the case of side and fill. The side function is the direction in which widgets are packed. So you can have a horizontal alignment of your widgets or a vertical. Here, as we can see, I'm doing a horizontal between button 1 and button 2. And those are laid out inside the frame object. So when the frame object, gets destroyed, all these are kind of like children. So they will also accordingly get destroyed. Other things that are in there is you can also specify the ordering. So you have the before and after, where you can specify a specific widget that you want a packed widget that's being passed in to be laid out against. Additionally, you have padding, and this is kind of standard for folks who are coming from UI programming. you sometimes want in certain UIs a kind of a border around a widget inside of a container. We could see this by first. Let me just go ahead and run this example. Right now, I don't have a widget, any sort of border or any sort of padding along this widget. So button 1, button 2 are plushed together as much. It helps provide some information for the layout manager to do its computation based on the constraints that you passed in for the UI. If I go ahead and let's just go ahead and exit this and change button 1 to have a padding in the X direction of 3 and a padding in the Y direction of, say, 5. This is going to be a bit uneven, but I'm just kind of illustrating how this kind of works. And we run this again, you'll see in order for it to pack and satisfy those constraints, it went ahead and created a padding in the X direction of 3 from the left-hand side here, and 5 from the top. But it also had to provide that inside of its sibling in order to satisfy its constraint, because they're kind of aligned with each other. These are the kinds of things that you would encounter as you are, developing inside LTK, LTK, and any other UI library, of course. But it is something to kind of take note. For a more drastic example, I'm just going to go ahead and make this 30 just to see what this kind of thing does. And you can see clearly this is how it's going to recompute the UI. The iPad X and iPad Y is based on I've never actually used these two, so I can't really, tell you what they actually do. But from what I read in the documentation, it's more of a growth thing than an actual hard coded, so if you expand the window, it'll recompute that to make sure that the padding is a specific number of pixels away from the layout of the frame or container that you're actually hooking into. But again, I can't really talk about iPad X and iPad Y just because I've never personally have used them inside any UIs. But I'm sure if there are others who have, if you guys can leave comments on the YouTube channel or, provide comments now, I will certainly, bring those up during our discussion. So I'm going to pause here just for a second here, just to hear if there are any questions. And just double check here. All right. Just a quick question before I continue. Everyone can hear me, right?
So I can hear you now. I actually had to rejoin in incognito mode for whatever reason. My my browser will not like the site in regular mode.
Okay. All right.
I have no trouble on my end. I can hear you. I've never had any issues with connecting or whatever.
I'm just seeing some comments here about
Yep.
issues regarding not hearing me. I just want to make sure folks can. Otherwise, I'm talking to myself, and there wouldn't be any fun.
No, we're here.
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So our next example is a grid layout. And here I'm actually kind of introducing another widget that's in the widget library, so to speak. That is the spin box. Now, for folks who are thinking, oh, this looks like it has a lot of different things. It has text boxes, spin boxes, has buttons. What doesn't it have? I will show much later on. It is not and this is because what it is. It's a binding library to Tech, and Tech doesn't have this. It doesn't have like some features that most people would want in a modern UI toolkit, like icon buttons to create icons. At least I haven't seen anything both in the Tech documentation or in the wrapper library that kind of points to a way of actually adding icons inside a UI written in Tech. But it does have your standard layout managers, and as we will see here, if we run grid, and then I'll explain the code, we are creating another container object, in the frame and adding a spin box to it. But what we've done is I've added added the frame into a grid, starting at 0, 0, and moving along to spanning like 3 columns. The row span and column span that are available in this this command, which for some reason is not showing up in my mini buffer. Oh, I see what the problem is. I have to close this in order to actually get it to show up. All right. So this is kind of the same thing that I showed earlier. The difference is unlike Pack, which has a anchor piece where you can specify which part of the window you can actually anchor a specific container class to, like top north, top left, or top bottom right, or bottom left, like you normally do in standard UI. Grid gives you it gives you kind of a cell-based way of doing layout. So you have specific cells inside your widget. Don't remember the actual spacing between the cells. I think it's kind of widget specific. And based on the dimensions of a given widget, I am hearing some comments. Hold on one second. Folks are talking.
Oh, sorry, that's not anything.
LTK. All right, I will go. Do we call it LTK or TK? From now on, I'll call it LTK just without subconsciously. I want to say LTK just because it's. But I don't know what the right pronunciation is. But LTK.
Is there even such a thing as right pronunciation?
It's what the masses agree on, Jace, right? It's what the masses agree on. if everyone here says,
well, that's not a constant at all.
If the masses say it's LTK, we go with LTK. If
I
they
have
say
a
it's
question.
LTK. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Are we using macro lay and close?
Stop. Just stop.
You're finished. I'll go with macro lay just because it sounds fancier. But and cloth. But anyway, what I wanted to bring up here is this sticky note here. This is kind of new for me for grid layouts because I've never seen a sticky property in a grid layout. At least if there was one, I wasn't aware of it in other libraries I've used. So this was kind of interesting. So what sticky does is it's kind of an anchor with respect to a cell. So like if you have like a 4x3 grid layout and you wanted, say, your spin box to be in, I don't know, cell 1, 2, all right? You can certainly in here say sticky east, and what this does is it will make sure that the spin box will hook into an anchor to the right side of that given cell. So if you had additional widgets and you kind of laid out the widgets in that 3x3 or whatever 4x3 layout in my example, it will make sure that this spin box always hooks to the right of its particular cell, regardless of the layout that it's in. So if we run this, obviously this will not do it because in this example, we only have one widget, number one. Number two, we're using row span. Row span is saying that this frame will actually span this entire number of rows. Column span is kind of the equivalent, but for columns. And since we only have one widget there, it's kind of like filling up the space in the entire widget. This spin box took a range, as you can see here, from 1 to 10, and it will stop at 10. As you can see right here, I can no longer actually input and output that. I could decrease this down to 1 again, and it will, it'll allow you to go ahead, and if you try to decrease again, it won't let you do anything. These kinds of things are kind of already available in the UI. But as you can see here, Spinbox has a lot of different kind of options that are available to you. What I've haven't even begun to show you is like, repeat interval, the delays, how do you actually want it to display? Do you want the relief kind of background? Is it a sunken relief, or like what we had earlier in the frame in the previous example? What kind of highlight thickness and highlight background? You have a lot of different ways of actually coloring these, and all these in styling this widget, and all these are not only specific to the spin box, but to a lot of different widgets that are available for you from tech. Which is kind of nice because you can actually get the majority of your application design kind of prototyped and showed to an individual. When you decide on, say, a particular widget toolkit, you have an interactive prototype that you can work with and improve on if you need to. Additionally, for one-off applications, which is what I tend to use this for, it's good enough for what's available, and it will give you functioning applications, which is what I've been trying to emphasize. It's really, really kind of nice for those simple things. But on top of that, it has some nice graphic widgets that I recently discovered because I usually use the basic widgets that are available in terms of text, spin boxes, buttons, check buttons, radio buttons. Those are all available. I'm not going to go through each one of them because it's kind of not necessary to show you kind of how LTK works. But this graphic widget one was particularly of interest to me because it shows a different approach to event handling. So in LTK, there are two kinds of event handlers that you could specify. One is the command, which is available for the majority of your widgets, whether it be the check button, text box, list box, and each of those take in, depending upon what type of widget it is, a handler that will take in a single argument. Now, in the case of button, because it's only called, that command is only called when the button is clicked, okay? you're seeing these examples where I am not specifying any arguments inside the event handler, and I'm just running with it. But let's say I go into the spin box example and I specify a command here. Okay, this spin box actually will return a value to the handler that is the value of the text box that's associated with that spin box, what it's actually displayed. So what we could do here is we can actually do something like this. And go ahead and recompile this. Oops, hold on. Forgot to specify the value. Okay. And if we run the grid example again, every time I do a +1, you can see that what the that it's returning the value of the callback inside the event handler itself. In fact, let me just do something even better. Let me go ahead and turn off the debug because we don't need this right now. Let me run that example again. So you can see that it'll keep on behind the scenes sending information to our Lisp REPL and gives us the values to the event handler. And that was even shown when I was showing you the actual tech output here. It hooks in Lambda closures behind the scenes that will appropriately call when an event happens. Let's see, what else I want to talk about. Yeah, let's go into the drawing example. So the other type of handler is binding, as you can see in this drawing example that I have here. Let me actually give you the end result of this, and then we can go through the code a bit. Give me a second here. I need to adjust my window so I can actually see the entire function. Jeez, really? There, that's it. Okay, and scribble. All this does is it creates a canvas which will allow you to draw stuff on, and as I'm on here, it will allow you to when the button is pressed down, it will draw an oval, and as I keep the button pressed down, it hasn't been released, and I'm drawing around. I'll just keep drawing ovals here. Nothing spectacular. You can see that this could be the start of what could be a drawing program. It's not complete, but there are a couple of things here that shows what another way of doing event handling and some things that you need to be aware of. One is the bind. So you can take a widget and instead of doing command, you can have finer control of it if you know what events are associated with that widget by using bind. And then bind takes in 3 arguments. It takes in, let me just close this so I can actually show this to you. It takes in the widget, the event that it's actually going to run on, which is passed in, has a string. And this event is the event that tech passes in. It's not some specialized event. I couldn't actually find some details. I had to actually go into the tech documentation to end up recognizing that these are actually events from tech that are passing in has full strings. And then we're just doing a lookup to the appropriate event handler using those strings. So if you want to know for any given widget, like mouse button, mouse movement, button click and all that, you should go and look at the tech documentation for those specific events that are going to be written out. But when you do that, it's also going to allow you to specify as a third argument a function that is your event handler, and that will take in the event object itself. Now, you may notice that I am not using the event object in some places, but I'm using it in others. Like, for example, in button release, we just ignore Actually, I just noticed something here. This actually should be EVT. Yeah, okay. We ignore the event in the button release, but all else we have the button the event handling mechanisms. Now, I wanted to bring this up because this I didn't realize when because I know, again, I normally used commands. I never actually touched bind until today. So this is kind of a topic of discussion in general. But when I did a describe on event X, because I never seen this and I thought it was in LTK, but it turns out it's actually in, what was it? It's in, it was hooking up into something else. This is incorrect. This is earlier when I was doing LTK describe event X and event Y. It kept saying that it was in the Common Lisp user library, but I guess it was because I was in the Common Lisp user package when I did this. But yeah, so the event structures that are in LTK, they have some convenient things that'll grab information from you. This is a, I don't believe that this is actually what's it, an object. It might be, but I don't recall it was being an actual class object. But it does have it has the structures common like naming schemes. So event X, event Y is available. There are other ones too available for actually grabbing information from the event itself. So like if you go here, you can type in event and you'll see that we have the ability to get the height, the root of the X, the Y, what button was actually pressed in that event. The event width and event height I never actually leveraged. Event key code I have and event mouse button I have, but not event X. Until today, event X and event Y was kind of new to me. But you can see that you can actually leverage this guy and write appropriate event handlers using the bind function is kind of what I'm trying to get at. This gives you finer control over specific interactions, but it comes at a cost. As you can see here, you have to specify, the event handler for every kind of state motion, state that you need to handle. So like in a button click, you need to handle button press and button release. If you don't need to handle them in both especially in both situations, like we are doing here, where in button press where we actually have to like set the flag and then turn on drawing and so forth. If you don't need to do that, then I encourage you to instead use command for your widget of choice. Here for Canvas, I don't believe, at least I haven't seen ways of writing commands to it. From what I read in the documentation, it actually does not, doesn't allow you to write commands to this guy. There are other widgets where you have to do this kind of like, we have to handle each event we want to handle specifically. Mainly Canvas and Top Level are the ones that I can think of. Top Level is a special kind of widget in that it creates a new window altogether for you. One thing, and this is a question that I still have, and I haven't figured it out just yet because I've done a lot of prototyping on this, but I haven't actually written an application and this is because of this main reason. When you open up a window in using the LTK with LTK macro, it creates a window, but it doesn't give you, I haven't found the ability to change the window's title. So when you run this, you may have noticed that our title is LTK. It doesn't, I haven't found I know of the accessor function. If I knew the top level handle, I know the access function that I need to use to go and set the title, but I haven't actually found how to get this handle's object instance in the REPL so I can go and set it. So that's kind of a bit of an unknown. Certainly, if you're going to be doing something, and you need that kind of control, another way to write this is using what I showed earlier, which is the LTK LTK start wish, and then we can write our functions and then LTK main loop to actually start the event loop. This certainly can give you the ability to probably start up a server without a new window, a new top level. But even that, I'm not entirely sure, because when you run LTK start wish on the REPL right now, unfortunately, the way I do this, I know I'm going to have to probably restart my image because I can't stop it for some reason. But we'll see. You can, obviously now say make instance LTK button. Sorry. There we go. Make master new text exit lambda. Oops. Let me go ahead and put this in a let box. This guy is going to be our hello world example that we saw before, but I'm going to have to probably put this in a block, shouldn't I? That's fine. I'll just go ahead and do this and then let it blow up when it does. We create a button, master nil, text, hello. You'll see that it creates, oops, I just typed in something wrong. That's what I wanted. And then I'll do an LTK pack on that. And we have our little button. And if we close it, now I have a problem, because if I try to start wish again,
Oh, it's already running. Right.
yeah, it's running in the thread. So yeah, and I couldn't find in the documentation how to actually kill it when I do something stupid like that when I exit.
Is that really an issue though? Because I think you can always just make another top level.
True. That is true. I could always make another top level. So the thing is, though, is when you want to close oh right, sorry. Give me a second. I just reset it myself. Yeah.
I'm actually currently reading the LTK source code to see if I can figure out if they ever actually take a handle on the top level that they create.
I don't know, because when
they init wish, they actually specifically they create a top level.
Yeah, they do, but I never saw any special variables in the documentation that tells me what the top level is. So if you find
it's named .ltk on the TK side, on the wish side.
Yes, on the wish side.
I don't know if,
yeah, you're right.
On the wish side, it's named .ltk, but I don't know if they ever actually make an object on the common Lisp side that refers to that wish object, is my point.
Oh, okay. Got it.
They dump a long string. They just have a hard-coded long string of stuff that they dump straight at wish when they start it. And one of the things in that long string is make a top level named .ltk.
Right.
And so I don't know if there even is an object on the CL side that represents that top level. I'm currently looking though.
Yeah, I looked at the documentation and I didn't see it, but certainly I didn't get a chance to go and dig into the source code in a lot of detail. But that's something I should have actually done and seen. Because I was hoping that there's like, oh, this is a global variable if you have access to this, that you can hook into. And because there's a lot of special variables that you can access to, like, for example, and we can get into a little bit more of the discussion here. One of the things that makes all this happen is what I was saying earlier. Behind the scenes, there's this Wish server that hooks into a stream that will send in like commands to the Wish server from the Lisp REPL. That's kind of how the communication mechanism works. So if you want to say there was an error in, let's say, your Lisp program, like what I was trying to do earlier, I was trying to refactor this because, as you could see, in this example, this could get a bit unwieldy if you have a lot of like callbacks. Now, if they're this small, it's not a big deal, but you may want to be able to like use a named function as your bound to.
Can you not? Does that? I mean, is that lambda form is validated, right?
What? Yes.
So can't you provide a function designator there?
Yes, you
For
can.
like-
In this, the reason why I couldn't hear is because of the fact that I'm trying to see. I wanted to pass some state into it.
Right.
So what I had to do is like move some stuff around to actually go and do it. I eventually figured it out. But one thing that this kind of showed me was, let me just take. Is this it? You know what? This is going to mess with them. Bindings, but that's fine. I can go ahead and do that. Okay. So let's say I created a function with this guy, defun draw oval, that takes in the event and the down parameter. Shoot. I killed my. 1 second. I have to go grab this again, because it killed what was in my buffer. Okay. So, okay. And in fact, I don't really need this because, no, I do need it. This here. No. And okay. Now kill this guy. I could do something like this. Fun call. Draw oval, PBT, and down.
You know, another thing that you could do, and this obviously doesn't apply to like in general, but a solution that you could do here is declare a special variable and just bind it around your whole thing. And then from your name functions, you can just access that as your like state variable.
Okay. Oh, wait. What's it? Oh, wait. That's right. 1 second. And this. LTK canvas. Oh, that's right. I also need to have the canvas element. Canvas. Now this guy becomes this guy. LTK workshop.
What
Why
actually
did you-
is the configuration key that you need to use in order to set the title of a top level?
WM-title. So there's a bunch of window manager functions that you can use
yes,
to actually specify the title of the window. So like you can, like, for example, minimize the top level. You could maximize that you could provide not a minimize. You could provide a min size and a max size to the top level of a window. You could specify its title. You could withdraw the window from displaying. Normalize it. There's you could specify like callback functions to like that when the window is closed, what should you do? Or if it's in focus, what should you do? So things like this are all available at your disposal as part of the API. However, if you use the LTK widget macro, which gives you this default guy, which is really nice, if you actually look at the arguments here,
Right. Yeah.
none of them actually say, hey, hook in the window level, the window object that I just created to this guy.
Yeah. I'm not entirely certain there is a way to get a handle on that, because like even if you just call start wish, it creates that
Yeah.
window.
And this is not surprising because I'll show you here. Let me go ahead and close this wish server for the time being, which will probably mess with my REPL, but I'll go ahead and restart it later on. If you start wish on the command line, that's what it does.
Right. Yeah. It creates a window.
Yeah, it just creates a window. Right, lets you mess with it ahead of time, and you can actually talk to it directly. Here, I think you can though set the window because that's bound to actually an object. I just don't remember what the name is again because I saw it earlier in the tech documentation when I was going through it. I just haven't played around with specifically what would happen when I set that up. But this is again, things that could help improve the library because I think that is kind of the one thing that's this library is kind of missing. But as I said before, it's been kind of like in its stable state for quite some time, and since it's good enough for a lot of things that it does. A lot of people haven't kind of touched it, but as soon as I'm sure that as I get into more and more doing some of this kind of prototyping stuff, I'll probably go and fix it, just because of things.
I'm not entirely certain there is a simple way to fix it, but I'm looking through.
Yeah.
I think you'd need to basically hack something into it in order to get a handle on that. I think you'd need to basically create a top level object, but bypass the code that actually sends the commands over to Wish to actually create the top level on the Wish side.
Mm-hmm.
Which is difficult because the only way you could do that is if you completely take over how the object gets initialized. You'd have to like allocate instance by hand and set all of the slots.
Right.
Because that command gets sent over in an initialize instance after method.
Interesting.
So I'm
because if you look at and I could start this again and just show you what was it. There was a widget demo that it created. It killed that application, as you can see, because the wish is no longer the wish top level is no longer there. This top level kind of took it over, and I was trying to see what this specific like top level widget did in order for me to like.
I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it on the on the tech side, on the using Tickle by sending commands directly. Like you can use so the function that does it inside of LTK is format wish, and it's basically just takes a format string and args and it sends that directly over to wish, right?
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
everything else is built atop that. So like there's nothing stopping you if you work out the name from doing a format wish by hand and sending it the right thing. But but I don't think there's a clean and easy way to actually make like a regular class object that represents that.
Right. But I don't think right now, and this is something that as I dig into the library, I'll probably
that initial top level is always going to be special.
It's going to be special.
I don't think there's anything you can really do about that. I don't know if there's a way to make that a regular top level widget object that you can use the regular top level widget API to interact with.
Yeah, if there's a way to, I wish there was a way to actually get the at least the ID name into the macro, so that way I could just say, WM title whatever, and then behind the scenes that function will say, okay, this is a special case. I have to send these commands to it. I may be able to
you'd
hide
need
some
to
of that
special
complexity.
case every single bit of the API that interacts with top levels to make that
Right,
work.
exactly. That's right. But
Which is,
it will hide some of the complexity from other users who are using,
I'll give you that.
and that's fine. If that's a little bit of a pain to actually hide some of that complexity and still not, because there was some sort of mismatch there. Like I didn't expect that when I create a window at the top level that I can't go and change its title. That's
Right.
from the API.
There's just no handle
Right.
on it. Is
And
the
that's
problem.
and I figured that it was something like that.
Yeah, I do remember running into that. This exact same thing, and wanting to do it, and just sort of deciding it wasn't worth my time. Because it's one of those like simple things that you expect to just be able to do.
You're right, exactly. And it's just, and it was because of that, you're just like, okay, it was, this is a good enough prototype, but I'll probably move to something else. You could certainly, show that
Exactly.
off. It doesn't have everything. Like, for example, like what I was saying, like in Common Qt, which is another, UI library that, at some point I should really cover. It has this ability to open up a window, set up its properties, and then just start, designing your UI, and it'll look like your final application. Here, you have to almost set up a brand new window separate from the window that was created when you initialized the Wish server, do everything in there,
Right.
and then
I think that's more a limit of Wish than it is of LTK.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm not at all complaining about LTK at this point. This is really just there's some plumbing that needs to somehow work around this so that LTK looks completely transparent and no one's aware of what's going on behind the scenes to Wish. That's
Right.
kind of where I'm coming from. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's this limitation here in Wish, but if there's a way for us to somehow, decrease the impedance, like a mismatch between actually leveraging this API and how it kind of hooks into the Wish, it will make prototyping on at least LTK a little bit better, rather than having to write additional code to handle that case of dealing with multiple top levels. I haven't actually shown you guys creating a top level, have I? So our top level, I think I may have to, just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to go ahead and restart my inferior Lisp here and load up LTK workshop and get into this guy. All right. To create a top level widget, and a top level widget is, as I mentioned, is basically your window. You can create a make instance, LTK top level. Now you can't actually pass in arguments to this instance directly. I had to create, if I remember correctly, there wasn't any clear way of specifying the title here. No, I can. You could actually just do this. And this should create a window. Hello world. But notice, as I said before, this guy stays around just because of that's what it was doing. In fact, come to think of it, I think I have a way of actually hacking into that. Okay, I have to go and dig into that. I just got an idea.
I'm curious what it is.
I'll tell you offline, and then you could completely butcher and criticize me because it's going to be a dirty hack, I think, but it'll work. This guy
close that window?
not necessarily closed a window, but I'm saying if in the with macro, I may as well just say in the with macro, I could specify an additional key that takes the title, and you know how this is actually getting rechanged to LTK instead of Wish. because if you do wish by itself, and I can show this to you, if you do wish by itself, it creates wish here instead of LTK. The command that actually taking in and making that widget has an LTK widget, I will just say take in an argument that.
I'm actually not entirely certain that that's a command being sent. One second. Wish. Yeah, that's actually, it's being passed as an argument to wish.
Really?
The command line, it's -name when the wish binary is launched.
Oh, okay. So now I know what I have to do. I think I know what this is now. So that's what this guy is for. LTK star
Which args?
which
Yeah.
args is LTK. Okay.
So yeah, so I guess you could just change it there.
So I could just do let. I could say LTK wish args being the list of -name. Hello. Okay. And then I can just do what I did earlier. You know what? Why can't just copy this? It did it right. There you go. That's what I had to do. All right. So that's not a big deal. So I can actually go and make this now into. So I'm going to go
There's
ahead
probably a
and.
whole lot of stuff that you can set on the wish command line.
Yeah. So in here, I'm going to say window title as an argument. And LTK star wish args. What the heck? Window title is not used.
Pack outside of the let. You
I
moved the
moved.
pack outside of the let. And
Well,
also you've got that list quoted.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. I need to have this as a list, though. Yeah, no warnings. Okay. There we go. This is what I was kind of looking for, but I accidentally killed it. We can see that it actually now properly creates a window. So for folks who are just joining us wondering what I just did, in order to set the top level instantiation of a window to a title when you're prototyping and creating applications, you have to specify, as what JS has just found in the wish command line. You have to specify a command, some command line arguments that need to be passed into wish when it gets called and started to create what the top level widget's name should be. And that is done through in LTK through the special variable star wish arg star or LTK wish args for folks who actually know what special variable notation is and are not following let over lambda's craziness of no earmuffs on special variables. This allows you then to behind the scenes send wish what the final application should be. It should have as its title, and allows you to kind of develop your application through. I'm going to stop here just because there are other widgets in here, but you know, I think really you should take some time to play around with the widgets yourself and see where they become useful for your applications. As with anything in terms of layouts and stuff like that, paper prototyping and doing some standard UI design ahead of time will definitely be worth your while before you start messing with LTK. But LTK gives you the ability to do that kind of interactive prototyping in real time. One thing, though, again, for our artists that are wondering, well, what about icons and the ability to do to draw like two-dimensional like icons for your UI like we have in Emacs here. These don't exist as far as I can tell inside. There's no icon button as far as I can tell in the tech documentation, so LTK will not have them either. But in terms of what you need to develop a full application minus these icons, the majority of them are available. You have file selection dialogues, message boxes, check boxes, sliders, and so forth. In fact, everything that is shown in this Wish demo is available at your disposal, as far as I can tell from my playing around with the library. The one thing that I have not had a chance to test yet, and this might be something related to using Common Lisp's Unicode library, is the conversion for labels in Unicode text, because technically does support Unicode text, as you can see here in this example here. But I haven't seen an LTK example that actually shows this off. So something to take note of when you guys are going through. Are there any questions?
No, not at this time.
Like this was really a nice little library for doing quick prototyping. Another nice library that I'm going to have, I would like to do next week to kind of show off, more UI programming in Lisp is it's not a little library, but it's a nice library to write applications in, is Common Qt. I'm biting the bullet and kind of learning it right now, so I'm going to give you guys kind of an overview. Just coming from Qt, I know up to like Qt 5 in the C++ world. The widget stuff seems to be very nice. Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, we just had a couple people that disconnected.
Okay, I was just I just didn't I'm not seeing the screen right now, so I have to like pull up the Jitsi Meet. Oh, folks are just leaving. Okay, got it. Oh, so Mike G has a question. What does the window ID function do? The window ID function, I don't recall ever seeing a window ID function in the API, but let's go and check it out. Is there one? Describe window ID. What is this? It is an actual function. LTK window ID. Okay, so I know what this is for. The window ID function is when you generate a top level value in the LTK with LTK macro, it generates an object ID that Wish returns back and gives it to you in that TL command. So let me see if I can pull up. So if you do LTK and you just go ahead and do TL make instance top level. Okay, I'm not, and let's, to make it different is LTK new. This is our new top level widget. You can return and see the window ID for this specific one by calling LTK window ID on the top level widget that you just generated. So, wait, what did I just do? Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. But this kind of shows what I was trying to show earlier, which is if you hit debugger here from Wish, it'll pop out to your Lisp debugger. But in here, I already know what the problem is. Top level doesn't have a text. It's a title. That's what I was looking for. There we go. So this is the actual pointer in memory for that top level widget. Now, you cannot use this, though, as JS pointed out earlier, with respect to the global top level widget, because we do not have a handle for that on the LTK side. Because when Wish starts, it's generating that guy. It doesn't, more specifically, it doesn't return anything when it actually completes its instantiation. It just takes commands from the bridge between LTK and the Wish server. Before I let you go, I thought I'd go into just a little bit about the communication mechanism. The communication to tech from LTK is this protocol that consists of 3 different things, which is the callback that it needs to that hook up for any given widget that and that's a closure that's hooked into the Lisp side. So when Wish does something that needs to hook into, it'll go back through the Wish server and actually talk to LTK about, oh, call this this debug hook to say that something happened, or call this for this callback because an event got pressed. So it does its own generation of those hooks behind the scenes. It's all done through a socket that's connected between the Wish server and the actual REPL that you're prototyping with. But again, some of the stuff that we kind of expect would be available, like the top level thing during initialization, isn't, because you have to pass those in as command line arguments. Other questions? All right. So, let's see something here. Oh, okay. So for folks,
What the heck is star TK star?
I have no idea. I have no problem setting the window to your browser.
Aha! It's a thing. It's actually a special variable that's exposed and it's a widget object.
Ah, geez. All right.
There it is.
That's what we needed. All right. Let's go and change the thing. It's just not in the documentation. Excellent.
Nope.
Glad to see once again.
I was actually suspicious that that was going to be the case, and I looked through the package definition and I didn't spot it, and so that was why I was really confused. But there you go.
All right, let's do this. And okay, and let's do this and do LTK WM title start TK window title. Okay, and let's see if this works. Another tab window, and I'm going to put some padding along this just so that I can actually see 500. 500. Okay. Okay, hold on. 5. Oh, hello, LTK. That's another window. Boom. Michael Gargano, you have come to the rescue, man.
Right, but what about the other one? Okay, no, that was.
What?
Okay. I see. Huh. Neat.
Very, very nice. This totally improves my experience. So, Gargano, thank you. Special thanks to him to figure out this global special variable. You've seen it here, folks. If you guys need to, I will check this guy into a repository on the AFP repos and post it on this YouTube video so guys can actually have these examples. Next week, we'll cover Common Qt. That's going to take a few weeks just because there's a couple of things related to Common Qt. Hey, Ken, did you put yourself on mute? Tim? Thanks. Yeah, next week we'll cover Common Qt. Well, we'll start covering Common Qt just because Common Qt is kind of weird.
Are we going to look at Qtools?
Yes. Yes, we'll do it through Qtools. I will not do it through the core library just because I think Qtools has done some really nice things. That way, folks can also learn Qtools at the same time. After that, suggestions are welcome. There are a couple announcements. We might go on a little bit of a hiatus in the middle of September. I'm giving a heads up now just because of some things that I need to do on my end. And we'll reconvene. It'll be about maybe 6 weeks, and then we'll reconvene in November again. So this next couple of weeks, we'll go through Qt and any other suggestions that folks have. And then we'll have a bit of a break between September and November. Any other announcements from folks? Any Lisp-related announcements from the folks on the call? Michael, do you have your hacker thing tonight?
No,
Okay, just want to make
that was last week.
That was last week. All right, cool.
Every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks. All right, just wanted to make sure. I wanted to give a bit of a shout out to that. Guys, look
you should have asked me last week. No problem.
A little shout out to Michael's excellent talk series on the game engine. Look at Discord for news announcements. Of course, any suggestions, I'm on Discord, I'm on IRC, and I'm on the functional programming Slack. So I will see you guys next week on Qtools.
All right, great. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.